What you're hearing right now is audio from one of the creepiest internet puzzles from the late 2000s era. Audio which was almost lost to time. All the images and audio in this video will be using cobbled together content that remains from this game, this Torment that we endured for so many years. But I first have to set the scene.
Maybe, but there is also no indication that anything can slow the explosive growth of the intoxicating game called World of Warcraft.
The year is 2007. Me and a lot of other people are spending a whole bunch of time playing World of Warcraft. The first iPhone was launched, revolutionizing portable technology as we knew it. We were on the cusp of the social media era and the tail end of the forum and chat room era. My friends and I would spend a bunch of time on 4chan especially. We would peruse the typical boards, B for stupid memes, V for video game news. But one board I particularly enjoyed was X, which was the creepy and paranormal board. There's something I personally find comfy about the immaculately crafted, creepy story and idea executed well. And X was where you could find interesting ARGs about all sorts of things. The backrooms itself came to prominence there even recently, showing that it still has an influence on the zeitgeist around media to this day. One game I found eternally fascinating was one which was extremely well known at the time due to its infamous difficulty and creepy content. Its name was Torment, and today I will be going through the available history, information, and theories surrounding this puzzle that lived rent-free in my mind for so many years. April 12th, 2007. The website greengecko.com goes live with a quote on the homepage that is eternally burned into my psyche. Hope is the worst of all evils, for it prolongs the torment of men. Today, snapshots of the website still exist, available on the Wayback Machine, but as they're mostly Flash files and Flash has been discontinued, the website as it was is essentially lost media. Pieces of it still exist, thankfully archived by the wonderful people at the Internet Archive. As someone who spent a significant amount of time enthralled in the world of Torment and its puzzles, simply because of the atmosphere, myself being far too young to contribute to any of the mind-bending puzzles, I really find this to be the biggest tragedy of Torment. One thing you will notice when people talk about it is that they have a significant amount of nostalgia for it. It's one of those pieces of media that really infects your entire psyche. What you're looking at now are some of the only available images still left on the internet from it. What was Torment? Well, it was deceptively simple. You would be presented with an image and some accompanied text, usually a quote, or sometimes just a random jumble of letters and words. Then, at the bottom of the page, there would be a text box that said, "Enter solution." If the solution was correct, or a valid URL, it would take you to the page. The whole website felt like a small world, like there was always something new to find, potentially some unclicked pixel or solution which leads to a page no one had seen before. Along with the creepy images and quotes, often this was accompanied by very creepy music and noises, some of which you are hearing currently in this video to assist with setting the atmosphere. Torment would openly state that there were red herrings and traps set to extend your torment. There being this idea that your torment was your time playing the puzzle, and this becoming the central theme of the puzzle is something which became apparent over its lifetime. Now these puzzle/solutions were initially very straightforward, but it quickly became apparent that this wasn't going to continue to be the case. The difficulty significantly ramps up as you progress, the solutions requiring an understanding of a number of different fields like literature, cryptography, coding, geocaching, history, etc., etc. All of the pages are no longer accessible even on the Wayback Machine, but thanks to a small Spanish YouTuber and a larger Spanish YouTuber named Allan, who is the only other person on YouTube to have made a video on this topic who highlighted them, we actually have footage of the first 3 Torment puzzles and how they worked. This being the only known footage on the internet of Torment while it was active. I cannot tell you how much it blew my mind when I found this, as someone who desperately wanted to see Torment in its heyday again. Now the first 2 puzzles were very basic, mostly to set the vibe, and what tools and practices would be useful as you progressed. Page 1 was an introduction to the game by its creator, depicting the creepy gas mask guy, as I affectionately refer to him, and displaying the following text.
You are about to experience torment unlike any other. Once you begin, you are on your own. There will be no additional hints. Each stage will provide a solution key. Each solution key must be entered in lowercase characters without spaces. Some solutions will be more obvious than others. An incorrect entry will result in an error message stating the page cannot be found. Odd guesses are apt to land at one of many strategically placed red herrings which eventually led to unsolvable dead ends. Stages become progressively more difficult. Your own concept of difficulty is dependent upon which direction your mental branches are twisted. All requests for hints will remain unanswered. It is suggested you bookmark your progress. Individual stages are not numbered, and the length of your torment will remain an unknown.
One of the reasons we have any information at all in regards to Torment is due to the user Tsu_Rockets and the journal that they've left live to this day, posting their solutions and progress. According to Tsu_Rockets, the solution to page 1 is Torment, and they note that it's just the definition, Torment being the Anglo-French word for torment. Page 2 was an angel sitting in a forest with the accompanied text.
I fear we are watched by the eyes of a stranger. We must communicate under the cover of darkness. I trust you understand.
According to Tsu_Rockets, the solution was found simply by highlighting the page which revealed the solution Midnight. Page 3 was a creepy pair of eyes with a long string of seemingly gibberish text. The solution is found through using what's called a ROT13 cipher. So in this case, A corresponds with N because it's 13 characters after it in the alphabet, and so on, which provides the text.
I am certain you are being watched, so I can only leave you this encrypted note to warn you of what lies ahead. You are about to begin an extraordinary journey into the unknown, unlike any you have attempted before. You will encounter many obstacles. Some will be simple, while others will challenge your mind and spirit. I have left several items of significant importance along your path. You must not ignore that which I have left for you, for indeed, strange things shall happen and secret things be known. Many around you shall fail. To survive, you must endure the torment.
The solution for the page being the gibberish word, which is an anagram of something else that I can't find any confirmation on. From here, we honestly don't know the content of each page, but we do have the solutions thanks to Tsu_Rockets. Page 4 had a string of Morse code, where if you reversed it and translated it, it read, "These are coordinates for Google Maps," which if you go to, takes you to the CIA headquarters. There's also a marking on the map for Kryptos, a sculpture here, which is the solution. Page 5. Now this is where things start to get pretty tough. This being a noteworthy page as it displayed a gold bug, something which I'll ask you to keep in mind for later. There seemed to again be a string of characters. Tsu_Rockets seems to have found a reference for the poem, figured out which characters correspond with what makes the lines from the poem make sense. They used this to then translate the characters, the result being,
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend. The end. You must identify the locations surrounding north 48 degrees, 51.7, 51.717 minus east 2 degrees, 23.650 minus 2, continue otherwise. For you, this is the end, my friend.
another location. If we go to this location on Google Maps, it takes you to a graveyard in France, which has a name that I wouldn't dare try to pronounce. From here they brute forced a combination of possible solutions, the correct one being Porelache Cemetery. Page 6 is odd, but basically the solution is an anagram of something which is already an anagram. The picture being the painting Madonna on the Rocks by Leonardo da Vinci. One of the phrases he would often use was an anagram of his name, O Draconian Devil. After a bunch of brute force, a solution was attained, which was So Dark the Con of Man, which is an anagram of the same thing. Page 7 was a string of Norse runes, which when translated roughly came to:
Change of plans. Do you actually believe that I don't know what you're trying to do? Haha, I've been watching your every move. I can assure you that things are not going to continue exactly as you thought. You will endure my style of torment if you survive, just like the others before you. You want to know the solution, right? The first 3 words, just told you.
The solution being change of plans. Page 7 uses a Vigneri cipher, which is a substitution cipher that uses a keyword, which determines how the substitution takes place. The keyword here being Torment gives the following text.
Huh, not bad for a beginner. So do you think you might survive? Perhaps you'll do quite well. But then we've just begun, and it hasn't been very difficult yet. Maybe if I put my mind to it, I can torment you a bit more. I think I will. Enough of this talk. What you really want from me is to know how to continue, correct? Let me see. What should it be? How about something disgusting? Are you ready for Periplaneta Americana? Yeah, Periplaneta Americana, that's it. I bet you're feeling pretty good about your progress, maybe even a bit cocky. After you spend some time with my little friends, they will begin to see what kind of shape you're really in.
The solution here being the scientific name for a cockroach. Solution 8 is a bunch of roaches on a grid, the solution being cube, as their orientation would only be possible on a cube. This one's kinda weird. Page 9 was a transposition cipher with the keyword as torment once again, the result being:
You're right. I am just tormenting you now. This one was not that bad. I did not even change anything except how I displayed the letters. Just wait, I have a few tricks up my sleeve. Oh, I almost forgot. You want another text selection so you can move on to the next challenge? Okay, let's use. This time, what do you think I have in mind next? Another Vigneri cipher perhaps? Well, bye for now.
Now we are still on the fairly easy solutions that don't require huge leaps in logic, as you can tell. Page 10 was a string of numbers that when ran through a hex system, which is basically where one number corresponds with a letter, the result comes to the coordinates here pointing to a tower in Britain called Tower Green, that being the solution. Page 11 is where things start to get pretty tough. The picture being the text from the Voynich manuscript, which is a language that to this day still hasn't been deciphered. Luckily, it seems that the solution was to use another rot cipher to get the result.
Death rock me asleep, bring me to quiet rest, to let my weary guiltless ghost out of careful breast. Toll on thou passing bell, ring out my doleful knell, let my death tell, death doth draw nigh, there is no remedy. Farewell my pleasures past, welcome my present pain. Feel my torments so increase, that life cannot remain. Cease now, thou passing hell, dung is my doleful knell, that the sound my death doth tell, death doth draw nigh.
The solution being, there is no remedy. Page 12's main clue is deja vu, and it seemed to relate back to its previous solution. The correct solution being, page 13 is a substitution cipher we have already used again, or a rot 13 cipher this time. This time, however, you used it backward, which translates out to the text.
Not quite what you expected. I warned you, I have a few tricks up my sleeves. I think it's time for a real challenge. Are you ready? I have a few friends who want to meet you. If you survive, I assure you we'll talk again. But now, you have some work to complete.
The solution being, some work to complete. Page 14 is seemingly really tough, and I'm just going to read through Sue Rocket's progression because this one gets really wild. Okay, I don't get if the flippy symbols tell you to turn the paper in relativity to the way that you're looking at it, or if they stay the same from the original orientation. The 7th and 8th symbols are always going to be Q and R if the paper is horizontal, and never when the 8th is a Q is the 9th a U. If it's a Q, then 9th is S, and 7th is a Q, then 8th is an R. So the 5th symbol is a directional one, must be instructing us to have the paper vertical, so that the symbols are P and O, which in order to make it vertical, the only movement is to make either A, staying still, which can't happen, or its movement symbol, or B, completely flip it over. And flipping it completely over would call for it to be the 3rd symbol, and the 3rd symbol only appears if you look at it in the original orientation. We take the symbols at the original orientation, but it still doesn't make sense. Here's what we'll do. Let's decode it taking the symbols as stationary, and decode it as they turn also. Then put each gibberish into another cipher. Double the orientation symbols. No sense in putting in double symbols to tell you to turn the paper right side up twice, meaning it turns in relation, not a set position. I know. I'll take a large chunk of text that doesn't have turns in it, translate it in all 4 positions, figure out which position makes more sense, and work backwards. Then I'll at least know if it's encoded anyway. No position is making words, so a second cipher. Something I missed in the description of this code: the lines inside each circle function like an arrow and tell the recipient how to hold the paper. So if I take it like an arrow and make it so part of the line is always pointing up, there are too many combinations. Do I always go from the original left to original right in the order I write them down? Okay, taking it as arrow point up. Dang it, gotta mirror the image again. The result being... Page 15 is a rot cipher, this time with a different number for every line, translating to Edgar Allan Poe's poem, The Conqueror Worm. This one is interesting because it seems to have our first red herring that Green Gecko mentioned on the first page. The last lines of the poem translating to...
That the play is the tragedy, man, and its hero, the conqueror worm.
Many assume the correct solution was man, but this takes you to a dead end. Sue Rocket's thought process on this was the following. Oh well shit. Take the rot number of each line, turn it into a letter. Like line 1 is rot 23, first letter is W. Line 2 is rot 5, second letter is E. I can't believe this took me all weekend to figure out. Page 16 is fairly easy, and with a bit of research the solution was found to be a reference to a pyramid in Mexico, the correct input being El Castillo. Page 17 is honestly really cool and one of my favorite solutions, the reference photo being the 8 of Wands from the tarot deck. Sue Rocket somehow makes the leap in faith to translate the varying lengths of the wand into binary code, which gives the translation for the coordinates of Stonehenge, that being the solution. Page 18 is honestly partially a setup page for the next one, which is the most infamous puzzle in Torment. It displays the text,
Perhaps it's time to have some fun. I know of a little darling who is just dying for a playmate. Remember your manners, and don't forget to shout ye rosary.
the solution being an anagram of shout ye rosary, which is share your toys. Now, we get to puzzle 19. And this one is an absolute doozy. In a way, the first 18 puzzles feel like a tutorial for this one. We are displayed with a huge number of children's blocks with different letters. The thing is with this one is just the sheer number of characters and the way that they're situated on the page being somewhat ambiguous as to which character follows the previous. Is that it's so complex that many standard cryptographic processes like frequency analysis don't work. Many different ciphers were attempted on this one, believe me. People were stumped, and this is where the true pain of Torment began. The blocks truly, and I mean truly, sent people to the brink of insanity. Some of the theories which came out as to how to solve it were truly wacky, and yet all had to be considered before they could be discarded, no matter how crazy they were. This led to some people posting sort of droll solutions that implied they'd solved the puzzle. These would usually be dismissed, but as people got more desperate, quite literally any suggestion was entertained. This was sort of the point at which Torment went a bit viral, just due to the sheer difficulty of the blocks. As I mentioned before, the URL for the website was greengecko.com, and the creator of the game was seemingly referring to himself as Green Gecko. Remember on page 1 where I said that the instructions said that no hints would be provided? As the puzzle got more popular and more threads appeared in various forums to discuss possible solutions to the blocks, the main hubs were 4chan's Xboard, a forum called Twelelv. There were other smaller threads that appeared, but these were the main ones. Now, especially on Twelelv, a particular user kept appearing in threads, with a name everyone found familiar, and he spoke in an incredibly cryptic tone and manner that was very alike the tone of the Torment game. That user's name was Green Gecko, and for the first time we started to get hints to the blocks puzzle. This sent the community into a frenzy, and especially when Green Gecko chose a certain user as his official messenger, we started to get some information that may eventually crack the solution. Green Gecko had a very particular way of posting that made it extremely clear that it was him. It's sort of hard to explain, but it was extremely obvious that he was the creator of the game. It was also found out that he had posts in many geocaching forums, which had already come up as part of the solutions to some of the puzzles. Geocaching is basically where someone would leave a small container at a certain longitude and latitude. Once you found it, you were meant to take an item of small sentimental or financial value and leave it in the cache. It was discovered that Green Gecko had actually posted a puzzle previously using the exact same image that was used for the blocks puzzle, and that puzzle was also never solved. Although I couldn't find any confirmation of this information other than people talking about it on the forums. One common theme amongst the hints provided was that they almost always referenced an Edgar Allan Poe poem. One was a reference to his poem Shadow, a Parable, so people thought that this was a hint to use a shadow cipher, which is something I can't find much information on. This unfortunately didn't work, but he was seemingly pointing us in the right direction. For a long time, the trail went cold. People were still fervently researching Poe and his poems to try and get closer to an answer, but to no avail. Our Torment was truly stretching onto eternity. Even with the resurgence of attempts after the puzzle went viral and 4chan did nothing to get us closer to the solution. In this section, I wanted to go into the history of the Twelelv forum thread because this was an interesting thing in of itself. It had different characters, and as I mentioned, a user was selected to be Green Gecko's messenger. I can't express enough how much this added to the experience. This was where Torment really transcended itself and became more of an ARG than just a puzzle. One of the most important hints that Green Gecko provided through his messenger was the phrase, "Try blue." This being another reference to Edgar Allan Poe and his fascination with cryptography. Green Gecko was almost a Satoshi Nakamoto type figure in the community for any crypto bros listening. So much so that people from Anonymous legitimately tried hacking him and the Torment puzzle to no avail at first, but let's put a pin in that and the Poe references for the moment. I would be remiss to not bring up Cicada 3301, something many of you are likely familiar with. Now these two puzzles, as I said, are extremely similar, to the point where you could almost argue that Torment influenced Cicada. The latter being what many theorize was a recruitment tool for a really high-level cybersecurity firm. Cicada became legendary for its globe-trotting international scavenger hunt for the next stage of the puzzle. Cicada is really interesting and something I would recommend looking into. I won't go into too much detail, but the reason I bring it up is that I find it really interesting the way that people talk about Cicada now that the hype around it has mostly died down. Allegedly, someone actually solved a puzzle, or at least announced that they had solved part of it. This then moved into a Discord group where a bunch of elites basically initiated members into the group. The theory being that the person that solved the puzzle was actually the creator, and the whole thing was left with a kind of proving that I'm very smart vibe. Apparently to this day though, the most recent stage still hasn't been solved. Though when I say that Torment was harder than Cicada, this is obviously something that's almost impossible to measure, nor am I smart enough to actually say one way or the other. I just find the comparison between the two interesting, especially the way people feel nostalgia for their time with Torment, where Cicada seems to be somewhat dismissed as fairly pointless. Before we get into the last part of the story, we have to briefly talk about Edgar Allan Poe. I've already mentioned that the many of Green Gecko's clues would make reference to Edgar Allan Poe, and as the years went on with no solution to the blocks, more hints would appear on various forums.
Ye who read are still among the living, but I who write shall have long since gone my way into the region of shadows. For indeed, strange things shall happen, and secret things be known, and many centuries shall pass away. And to our chamber there was no entrance save by a lofty door of brass, and the door was fashioned by the artisan Coronus, and being of rare workmanship was fastened from within. Man is disturbed not by things, but by the views he takes on them. Suddenly I could sense increased vigor, so I returned to my old companion, awaiting my demise.
There are more of these, but you get the idea. He was certainly an interesting guy and knew how to play a character. One of his clues, as I mentioned, was Tri-Blue, a reference to W.B. Tyler, Edgar Allan Poe's supposed alter ego. Poe was fascinated by cryptography and had a column in a newspaper where people would send him encrypted texts that he needed to decode, and he would post the results. Two appeared under the name W.B. Tyler, and these two were the only ones that Poe never posted solutions for, making a lot of people theorize that Tyler was Poe himself. For a long time, no solution to these was ever found, and they were somewhat forgotten outside of extremely niche cryptography circles. In the 90s, cryptography had somewhat of a resurgence, and a website and challenge was made to solve Tyler's forgotten ciphers. Bockler.com was a domain that appeared in the 90s with the intention of solving Poe's forgotten ciphers. In the year 2000, Tyler's second cipher was solved by a man named Jules Broza, 169 years after it was first created. The team of judges had the following to say about Broza's solution. But as Broza's solution shows, the cipher is not a hash, but English prose. The second cipher's many errors, the judges agreed, stem from the difficulties distinguishing the different type styles and their inversions and reversals. William Lenhart, professor of computer science and mathematics at William College of Alternative Solutions, hoping to improve on the spelling and grammar of the plain text, but found only trivial misidentifications by Broza. In the end, Jerry Kurz writes, if the text turns out to be by Poe, it would fit into his grand scheme of speaking from the dead and be his final message from one of the greatest authors in American literature, a writer obsessed with the macabre and the transcendent power of words. And if not, that Rosenheim suggests may be an equally interesting prospect. One of the central themes of the cryptographic imagination is the difficulty of knowing who speaks in a written text. However much we would like to fancy ourselves unique individuals, writing is a slippery, transpersonal medium. Think about the continuing arguments about whether Shakespeare was the middle-class boy from Stratford or Francis Bacon. Better yet, think about the difficulty even serious scholars have in identifying the provenance of newly discovered poems. Often they simply can't tell if they're by Shakespeare, arguably the greatest and most distinctive English dramatist, or not. Thus, Rosenheim insists there is something mysterious even in the decrypted cipher, not only because we do not know who encrypted it, but because it reminds us of the uncanny and limited immortality writing sometimes affords. As Poe wrote in his obituary for Margaret Fuller, the soul is a cipher in the sense of a cryptograph, and the shorter a cryptograph is, the more difficult there is in its comprehension. If you're interested in how Mr. Broza came to the solution, I've provided it in the description. Part of the point of Torment was the torment itself. It became a part of the people who got involved in it. It got under your skin, and it was something that you would find yourself thinking about when you were doing everyday tasks. One of Poe's short stories, The Gold Bug, is one of the puzzles in the game that I mentioned earlier. And one of the themes of the story is to even ask the question as to if the treasure exists at all, or if the torment of it being out there is the point. For is that not the thing that gets us out of bed in the morning? For now, we were reaching 4 years of our torment and no end was in sight. I really encourage you, if you found this video interesting, to go over Sue Rocket's theorizing about the possible solutions to the blocks. They really highlight the sheer veracity for which people were hungry for solutions to this puzzle. People were going back to previous puzzles and trying to rationalize if the blocks itself was a red herring or a dead end. Then, out of nowhere, a user named Pent on the 12 forums made the following post. I've been working on Torment for the past few weeks, slowly working my way up to the blocks, and getting stuck there like seemingly everyone else. Yesterday I was messing about with the blocks, trying various methods to decipher it, when I suddenly managed to decipher the blocks in such a way that it left a clear, coherent message. Surprised, I quickly searched Google for the deciphered message and nearly jumped out of my chair when I discovered from where the deciphered message came. I knew I'd correctly deciphered the message, and even more exciting was the fact that the deciphered message was cut off, leaving 3 words until the end of the sentence. With my hopes sky high, I quickly returned to Torment to try the words and error 404. I tried everything I could think of in regards to the deciphered message, but I couldn't figure out what the actual answer to the page was. My hopes quickly failing, I turned to the FUCH hint to see if it gave any answers. I was able to decipher it as well, but I couldn't figure out how it applies to the puzzle. I also couldn't figure out if any significance the numbers have. My hopes now approaching terminal velocity, I tried to solve the original Child's Play puzzle, but it appears to use a different key. There were 2 small typos in the deciphered message, which wasn't surprising given the existence of likely intentional typos throughout Torment, although nothing I tried in regards to them proved to be the correct solution to the puzzle. Yes, despite having deciphered the blocks, I've found my torment is unending, and I'm still unsure how to actually solve the puzzle. I've tried everything I could possibly think of with the deciphered message, but there isn't anything obvious that I can see. I'm starting to think the answer lies not in the deciphered message, but the key used to solve it. There seems to be some pattern to it, but I can't seem to wrap my head around it. Anyway, given that I was only able to decipher the blocks based on all of the information discussed in this thread, I wanted to come here to try and provide some hints to everyone working on Torment. Unfortunately, it's really hard coming up with a hint that doesn't give away too much. I figure I'll give some advice regarding things that GG has already posted. My best advice would be to take what GG has posted at face value, that is, don't think too much about it. Remember stoicism? The most obvious meaning to his hints is probably the correct one. Also, his shrill, more than you realize hint is probably of the 2 most useful, when you understand what he meant. Again, think the most obvious. When you understand what he meant, again, think the most obvious, you can get a good idea of how to go about deciphering the blocks. I again apologize if that doesn't seem to be of much use, but hopefully the fact that the blocks are solvable will provide some hope. As I'm still figuring out what the actual answer to the puzzle is, if someone would like to email me or add me on Windows Live Messenger, I'd be happy to try and provide slightly more useful hints, and hopefully once someone else deciphers the blocks, he or she will have a better idea as to what the actual answer is. Later that day, after a whole lot of begging, Pent further clarified how he reached the solution, the correct cipher being a homophonic substitution cipher, which in an amazing twist of fate is exactly the same cipher Jules Browser used to solve the W.B. Tyler cipher. Pent made a post explaining exactly how to translate the text of the blocks. Was this the solution to the blocks? Was our torment finally over? The solution after all this time was another Poe poem. Few persons can be made to believe that it is not quite an easy thing to invent a method of secret writing which shall baffle investigation. Yet it may be roundly asserted that human ingenuity cannot concoct a cipher which human ingenuity cannot resolve. In the facility with which such writing is deciphered, however, there exist very remarkable differences in different intellects. Often, in the case of 2 individuals of acknowledged equality as regards ordinary mental efforts, it will be found that, while one cannot unriddle the commonest cipher, the other would be scarcely puzzled by. The next 3 missing words here are the most obtruse, and that is what many assumed the solution would be. What was worse is that there were now rumors that people had indeed been able to use Pent's post to solve the blocks, where Pent says he was unable to come up with a solution that had worked. This was where things went into an absolute fever pitch, and the website and Green Gecko's email were allegedly compromised by Anonymous. He actually took the website down and rehosted the puzzle at a new URL, themostabstruse.com, seemingly acknowledging Pent's solution. However, frustratingly for some, the puzzle on the website was still the blocks, which implied that the most abstruse, which is what many thought the solution was certainly incorrect. A few weeks later, even the most abstruse went down, and on the forum people were suggesting that a culling had taken place, and that those that had solved the blocks had been contacted directly by Green Gecko, as one user theorizes. I want to note that Sue Rockets theorizes that Pent, the user that posted the solution to the blocks, is Gecko. I think this is a fun theory because it reminds me a lot of the idea of W.B. Tyler announcing the solution to his own ciphers. After reading some of Pent's available posts, I personally don't think that he is Gecko. After users begged Green Gecko for clarification, on the 20th of the 6th, 2011, in what appears to be his final post, he confirms that the show is indeed over, and that our torment has finally ended. But at what cost? If you have stuck with me till now, thank you so much. I really hope that the other people that remember this puzzle find this video, and they're able to add anything that they remember about it in the comments. I loved Torment so much, and it's a period of my life I look back on fondly. One of the reasons I wanted to make this video is that I actually really want to recreate the experience of the Torment website in the modern era, something I'm genuinely not sure is even possible. But a Torment restoration project is something that I would adore, and I really hope that if anyone out there has the HTML files or images, and especially the audio that they downloaded, that I'm sure still exists somewhere, then please reach out. Before I go, I really have to mention a hilarious theory I read on the identity of Green Gecko, and that is that he's Alex Hirsch, the creator of Gravity Falls. Hirsch famously had to help a community solve a puzzle that he had made, where the fandom had to find a statue of Bill Cipher somewhere out in the world. It would be very cool if this was the case, but who knows? Hopefully that leaves you with some torment to chew on.